All right, in college algebra, we're looking at quadratic equations today, lesson 1.4. Quadratic equation. All right. What is quadratic? What is quadratic? All right, well, a quadratic equation is when you have x squared in the equation somewhere. X squared, you might have plus a 3x or a 5x or a 10x, and then plus or minus a number, and it's always set equal to 0. This is what a quadratic equation is, and we can solve this by using what's called the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is this right here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. What's this a, b, and c stuff? Well, right here. The coefficient for the x squared, the number in front here, is a 1. So that would be my a. A would equal 1. Right here, this number, it's a positive 3 in front of the x. That's my b. And then this number right here, which is a negative 5 in this case, that would be my c. That's my a, my b, and my c. So I would put those into the quadratic formula. And then I would solve it out. And we're going to look at that today. When you have an equation like, let me just make one up here. 3x plus 5 equals 7, like we just did previously. This is linear. And here's my equals, so I minus 5 on both sides. So I got 3x, and that goes away, and that equals 2 now. And then I divide by 3. And then x would equal, that's just 2/3, we'll say. But when you have a x squared in the equation like this right here, you can't really do all this. So this is kind of out when you have a quadratic equation with x squared. So we use the quadratic formula. Now there is a song that I use to remember the quadratic formula, and it goes to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. And it's like this right here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that's the song to help you remember the quadratic formula. All right, so let's look at what we're doing in here. So look at these problems here. Number 1. Now this is solved by the zero factor property. Solved by factoring. Zero factor property. We're not going to do the factoring in this expedited course. We're just going to use a quadratic formula. So let me get a piece of paper here. All right. So in this one we got t squared minus 12t plus 35 equals 0. So it equals 0, so we're in good shape. It's got to equal 0 to be able to do this. We look at this and we see right here in front of my t, that's a 1. So a is 1 in this problem. Right there's my b. B is negative 12 here. And then here's my c right there. C is 35. And we're going to take these numbers and put them in the quadratic formula. Now let me write it down again so you guys can see it. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the quadratic formula. Okay? Now, I'm going to put these numbers in the quadratic formula. So what I like doing, I like to go ahead and just write it out. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There you go. And now right here where each of these sets of parentheses are, that's where my b's and my a's and my c's go. All right, so starting with my A, if you look at the formula here, A goes here and here. Right here and right there. There's where my A goes. B is negative 12. B goes in these two spots. B goes here. B goes there. And then C only has one place it goes at the very end here. That's 35 goes there. And there you go. My numbers are all in. Okay? Now, after you put your numbers in there, there's 3 things you do separately. Right here, there's one thing. right there. Inside the radical, that's a second thing. And right there's the third thing. We do these three things separately. So right here we have a negative in front of this. Negative 12 would make that a positive 12. So x equals positive 12, plus or minus. Now inside the radical, I don't do the radical. Now what you can do, you can just punch this in your calculator all at one time. All right, with the parentheses and everything. Don't leave anything out or you'll make a mistake. So I'm going to put in parentheses negative 12, and then squared, and then minus 4, and in parentheses I got a 1, and in parentheses I got a 35. And look at there, I get a 4. All that to get just a little 4. Okay. Now down here in the bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. All right, there you go. So I did all three of these things. All right, now, after I get that done, I look at my radical here and see if I can simplify it. And sure enough, the square root of 4 is 2. So there you go. This is 12 plus or minus 2 divided by 2. And since the radical's gone away, okay, I can just go ahead and perform these operations. So this is plus and minus. So we always have two answers when we do this. So if I do the plus one, 12 plus 2 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So 12 plus 2 is 14, divided by the 2 down here, and that's 7. There's one solution right there. Now let's do the minus one. 12 minus 2 is 10, divided by 2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 12 minus 2 is 10, divided by this 2, which is 5. And there's my two solutions, 7 and 5. Both work on this. Now if you go back up here and look at the equation, if I put 7 in, 7 should work. Let's see here. 7 squared would be 49, minus 12 times 7 is 84, plus 35. And if I punch that in, I get 0. Sure do. If I put 5 in, now this time I'm just going to use a calculator. Okay? And I'll show you guys. You just put 5 wherever the variable is. So in this case, okay, I'm going to put parentheses and I'm going to put 5. Now you always have to put parentheses squared whenever you're putting it in for your variable. So it's 5 squared minus 12, and then parentheses, I'm putting a 5 again, and then plus 35. And look at there, I get 0. So that tells me I'm right. Okay, so my answer is 5 and 7, and you can see on here that's what it said it was supposed to be. Here's another one. Solved by factoring. Well, we're going to do the quadratic formula. All right, so it's 2x squared minus 11x plus 9 equals 0. All right, so it equals 0 like it's supposed to. If it doesn't equal 0, you got to make it equal 0, and we'll do one like that in a minute. All right, so here's my A. My A is 2 this time. My B is negative 11, and my C is 9. And so I'm going to put those in the quadratic formula. So here you go. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. There you go. Now, I put my A and my B and my C in here. So if you remember from the quadratic formula we wrote a while ago, A goes in these two spots right here. A goes here and here. B is negative 11. Negative 11 goes there and here. And then C is 9. It's all the way at the end. All right, there you go. So I put my numbers in. Okay, now again, there's 3 things to do. 3 things to do here individually. So x equals right there, negative 11. That's a positive 11, plus or minus. In the radical, let me get my calculator again. All right, parentheses, negative 11, parentheses, squared, minus 4, in parentheses, I got a 2, and in parentheses, I got a 9. Okay, and that is a 49. All over 2 times 2 down here is a 4. Okay, so I did these 3 things, and now I look at my radical. The square root of 49 is 7, so this one works out and makes the radical go away again. So I have this right here. Okay, now, so I've got 2 answers here. I got 11 plus 7, which is 18, divided by 4. And then that simplifies 9 over 2. There's one solution. And then I've got 11 minus 7, which is 4, divided by 4, which is 1. There's my other solution. And so here, 9 over 2 and 1. 9 over 2 and 1 is my two solutions. Okay. Let's get another one under our belt here. All right, let's go to number 3 on this one. All right, so we have 4t squared minus 17t equals 15. Okay, now see how we got our t squared? So it's quadratic, minus 17t. But look, it does not equal 0, it equals 15. So what I'm going to do is I got to fix this. I got to subtract 15 from both sides. See, now this side over here is going to go down 15. This side over here is going to go down 15, but it will still be equal. So it means I got 4t squared minus 17t minus 15 equals, and over here now that's a 0. And so I fixed it. It equals 0 like it's supposed to. Now here's my A, there's my B, and here's my C. Okay, and we'll put those in the quadratic formula. All right, so here we go. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There you go. Now we're going to put our numbers in there. So my A is 4, so remember now 4 goes here and here. B is negative 17, well that goes in there and goes right there. And then C is a negative 15, that's all the way over at the end. Okay? All right, then after you do that, you have 1, 2, 3 things to do here. All right, so right here, 2 negatives makes a positive 17. And the radical here, let's get the calculator and we'll just punch that in here. Negative 17, parentheses, squared, minus 4 in parentheses, I got a 4, and in parentheses, I got a negative 15. And that comes out to be a 529. That's a big one this time. Okay. And it's all divided by 2 times 4, which is 8. Well, there you go. So I did all 3 things here. All right, now, I focus on my radical every time. All right, so I'm going to do the square root of that 529, which is 23. All right, there you go. So I just did the square root of 529, which is 23. And again, it's a perfect square. They're not always perfect squares. We'll do one like that in a minute. All right, so here's my 2 answers then. I got 17 plus 23, which is 40, divided by 8. And that comes out to be 5. There's one solution. Then I have 17 minus 23, which is negative 6, divided by 8. And that simplifies to negative 3/4. There's my other solution. And there you go. Look at my answer. We're right. Negative 3/4 and 5. Both of these will work out this equation. So if I was to put 5 in for t, it would work out. And if I was to put negative 3/4 in for t, it would work out too. Okay, now we get to number 4 here. This says solve the given equation by the zero factor property. And notice on it, we don't have a b term on this. So in this case right here, we can solve this by doing the square root property. So what I would do here is I would add 121 on both sides. Okay, here let me just write this on here a little bit bigger. So x squared minus 121 equals 0. So I'm going to add 121 on both sides. And that would go away. So x squared equals 121. Okay, now, instead of doing the quadratic formula, I can do the square root property, which means since this is squared, I'll square root both sides of the equation. And the square root will make the square cancel off, and it's just x. Now, when I do this, though, when I square root both sides, it's possible that this could be a negative number or a positive number. So over here, I'm going to put plus or minus the square root of 121. It could be plus or minus. So now I do the square root of 121, which is 11. So that means x equals plus or minus 11. So negative 11 is an answer, and positive 11. These are my 2 answers right there. Okay, you can just type in plus or minus. There's a plus or minus button you can do, and just do plus or minus 11. That's my solutions there. Okay, and here's another one, number 5. Solve this by the square root property. Okay, x squared equals 9. All right, so I'm just going to square root both sides. The square root will cancel the square, which means x equals the square root of 9. When I do that, it could be positive or it could be negative. So it's plus or minus square root of 9. And then, of course, the square root of 9 is 3. So x equals plus or minus 3. Okay. All right, moving right along. Here's another one, solved by the square root property. Okay, number 6. All right, so number 6 here. 20 minus t squared equals 0. Okay. Well, see how my t squared is negative? So I think what would be best is to just go ahead and add t squared to both sides so it's over here positive. Okay, so I get rid of it here and it goes over here and it's positive t squared and I got the 20. And now I can do the square root property. So I square root both sides. Okay, the square root cancels the square, which means I have t equals, over here square root of 20, but now this could be plus or minus. So I'm going to put my plus or minus right there. When I square root both sides, it's always plus or minus because it could be a positive value or it could be a negative value. Okay, now the square root of 20, if I punch that in, it's a decimal. Okay, here, let me show you. The square root of 20, look at that, it's a decimal. So we don't really want decimals like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to break this down. And this one, like we talked about before. So I'm going to break it down by 20. I start with 2, so 20 divided by 2 is 10, circle my 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5, circle my 2. And then 5 won't break down, so I circle it. So that's what 20 breaks down to. Well, see how I got a pair of 2's there? That's going to send a 2 out of the radical. And this 5 doesn't have a partner, so he's stuck in the radical. So it's plus or minus. There you go. That's my solutions. And if you look, there's a negative one and there's a positive one. So there's my 2 answers. So you could do them separately like this, or you could put plus or minus and do that. You could do them either way, punching them in. Okay. Now, look at number 7 here. All right, we've got 2x minus 4 in parentheses squared equals 30. Now we can do the square root property with this too. So all I'll do is I'll square root both sides. Since I have all this thing squared, I can square root both sides. Okay, so when I do that here now, the square root cancels the square, which leaves me this 2x minus 4. When I square root here, of course it could be plus or minus. Okay. And if I punched in the square root of 30, it's going to be a decimal. See there? We don't want decimals. So we're going to have to simplify the radical. So again, I start with 2. 30 divided by 2 is 15. 15 doesn't divide by 2, but it divides by 3. So that's 3 times 5, and then 5 will break down. And so now if you look at this, there's no partners. 2 doesn't have a partner, 3 doesn't have a partner, 5 doesn't have a partner, so nothing comes out. So it's just plus or minus radical 30. Okay? It won't simplify. All right, so now what I have to do here is I'm going to have to add 4 to both sides because I still have this to solve here. So I got 2x equals, and usually when we have this radical here, we'll put the plus 4, we'll put the 4 first. So it's 4 plus or minus radical 30. I can't add the 4 to the 30 because 30 is in a radical. So you have to keep them separated. Then I have this 2 right here. I got to divide both sides by that 2. And then there you go. X equals 4 plus or minus radical 30, all divided by 2. And my radical wouldn't simplify, and I can't divide the 4 and 2 because there's no number here to divide by 2. So I can't do any dividing. When this 2's down here, you got to divide both of these by 2, and there's no number here to divide by 2, so that's my answer. And so now if you look over here, it looks like we've got well, here you go. The answer is D, which is what we have right there. 4 plus or minus radical 30, all divided by 2. If you notice, this has plus, but it don't have the minus. This has minus, but it don't have the plus. It's got to be plus and minus. So the answer is D. Okay. Now, what about number 8 here? All right, solve that by doing the quadratic formula. All right, I tell you what. Let me get this paper here. Okay. So we got r squared plus 3r minus 7 equals 0. It equals 0, so we're in good shape. This time my variable is r, which the variable letter doesn't really matter as far as what we're doing here. Here's my answers right here. Okay. But in this now, A, well, it's a 1. Right there's B, it's a 3. And right there's my C, negative 7. Now, they got to be in this order. If they're not in the order, you got to put them in the order, so you got your A, B, and your C. All right, let's use quadratic formula. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. All right, now A is 1, so if you remember, A goes here and here. B is 3, so we got a 3 here, we got a 3 there, and then C is negative 7, it's all the way over at the end there. Which means now we have 3 things to do. We got this, this, and this. Okay, so right here, this is just a negative 3. In my radical, let's punch this in. All right, in parentheses, 3 squared minus 4 times 1 in parentheses and a negative 7 in parentheses. You got to use these parentheses right here or you'll screw up. That's a 37. On the bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, now you can see here that's what my answer is. All right, but now what you're supposed to do next is you're supposed to explore the radical and see if it simplifies down, which it doesn't here. 37 doesn't even break down. So we're stuck. This is it. That's my answer. But after you get to this point right here, you always check your radical and see if it simplifies. This one doesn't. Okay. We'll do a few more of these. Let's skip down to 10. Here's number 9 right there. You can look at that one, and here's the answer. See if you can do that on your own. Now here's number 10. All right, so in this one, it's already equal 0. So here's my A. My A is 3. There's my B. My B is 6. And my C, there it is, 2. Okay? So we'll put those in the quadratic formula. So here we go. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay. Now, my A is 3, so that goes here and here. B is 6, it goes there and there. And then C is 2 over at the end. All right. Now, I've got 1, 2, 3 things to do. All right, so right here, that's a negative 6. Plus or minus. In my radical, all right, let's get the calculator here. In parentheses, I got 6 squared minus 4. And then I got a 3 in the parentheses, and I got a 2 in the parentheses. Okay. What does that come out to? 12? All right. And then down here, 2 times 3 is 6. All right. Now, I have to get to this point. You see, I don't have the answer right here because something's, see, it's not the same as what we've got over here. But I always look at my radical. Radical 12. Okay. That breaks down. That's 2 times 6. Circle my 2. 6. That's 2 times 3. Circle my 2. And circle my 3. And if you look at this now, I've got a pair of 2's. That's going to send a 2 out of the radical. And this 3 is stuck because he doesn't have a partner. So that's a 2 radical 3 is what that is. All right, so I'm going to come back over here now. X equals negative 6 plus or minus 2 radical 3 over 6. That simplifies this radical to that now. Okay? And now you're done unless these 3 numbers right here divide down. And they do. They all divide by 2. You can't simplify unless all 3 of these do. Okay, the previous problem, remember these 2 would simplify, but it didn't have a number there, so you couldn't. Well, all 3 of these do. They all divide by 2, so I'm going to divide them all by 2. -6 divided by 2 is -3. 2 divided by 2 would just be a 1, so it's a 1 radical 3. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So there you go. There's my answer right there. So let's see here. Well, the answer is D. Right here it is. -3 plus or minus radical 3, all divided by 3. Okay. All right, now look at this next one here. This next one, we've got a little product here. This equals 7x. What we're going to have to do, we got 5x minus 1 times 2x plus 4. That equals 7x. Okay. Let me move this over a little. I've got this product here, which means I'm going to have to multiply them. You can do what's called the FOIL method, or you can do the box. All right, the box, I kind of like it because it organizes your answers. I've got a 5x minus 1 on top, and then I got a 2x plus 4 on the side. We did this with imaginary numbers, if you remember, in 1.3. So now right here, this square, that's 5x times 2x, which is 10x squared. This square, that's 2x times -1, which is -2x. This square, that's 5x times 4, which is 20x. And then this square, that's -1 times 4, which is -4. And then usually when you do the box, these 2 in the diagonal here will go together, which they do, see? So this is 10x squared, and then -2 plus 20, it would be 18x, and then minus 4. So that's what this is right here. So I'm going to put this over here. This is 10x squared plus 18x minus 4. That's what this is right there, and it equals 7x. Okay, now we want to solve this. Which, to solve this, remember, it's got to equal 0, and it doesn't. It equals 7x. So I'm going to have to minus 7x on both sides to make this equal 0. And when I do that, these are like terms now. So I've got 10x squared, and then 18x minus 7x would be 11x. And there you go. There's my quadratic formula that equals 0, or my quadratic equation. Now I use the quadratic formula to solve it. All right, so x equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, now I didn't put what each one was, but here's my a right there, 10. That goes here and here. There's my b right there, 11. 11, 11. And then -4 is my c, and it's all the way over there. Okay, now there's 3 things to do. Right there, right there, right there. 3 things. So right here, that's -11. All right, in my radical, all right, let's push this in. Okay, I got 11 in parentheses squared minus 4 in parentheses. I got a 10 and I got a -4. Okay, so I just type this in like it looks. Don't type the radical though. We don't want to do that. That's 281. On the bottom, 2 times 10 is 20. Okay. All right. Now focus on the radical. First thing I do is I punch it in because it might be a perfect square. So we're just going to do the square root of 281. And it's not a perfect square. Didn't have it on the screen. But all right, so we're going to have to see if it breaks down. So I'm going to do radical 281. All right, I'm going to divide by 2. It does not divide by 2. Divide by 3. It does not divide by 3. Divide by 4. I don't think it breaks down. Here's what you do when you do the square root. It's 16.7. So you divide this, and you go up to 16. And if you don't get something before 16, then it doesn't break down. And this doesn't. I can divide this all the way up to 16, and it won't divide. See, 281 divide by 3. 281 divided by 4. since 4 won't go into it, no even number will. 2 won't go into it, so no even number will. So don't even try them. 281 divided by 5, and you know, it won't break down. So we're stuck right here. So that's it. That should be my answer. And if you look at it, here it is. Yeah, sure enough. Now look, now this is different looking maybe to you, because what it done is it broke it down. It broke it up. It divided both of these by the 20. So it did negative 11 divided by 20 plus or minus, and then it did the radical 281 divided by 20. So it divided both these by 20. So that's what you have here. So you got the negative 11 over 20 plus the radical 281 over 20. And then you have negative 11 over 20 minus radical 281 over 20. So there's my two answers. Okay. Now there's another one like that. Okay. Now you can maybe try this on your own. The answer here is 9. It just has one answer. We had a double root answer on that one. Okay, we'll move on to this. Excuse me. A quadratic equation has negative 4 and 1 as its solutions. Find the values of b and c if the value of a is 1. Okay, what we're going to do here is, if negative 4 is a solution and 1 is a solution, these are my solutions. That's what x equals. X equals negative 4, x equals 1. All right, that means I have these factors. These are my solutions. That means these are my factors. X plus 4 and x minus 1. I just do the opposite of these. X plus 4 and x minus 1. Actually, if I just add 4, see, if I add 4 to both sides here, I got x plus 4. And if I subtract 1 on both sides here, I got x minus 1. These are my factors. Okay? Now, if I multiply those factors together, I'll get the quadratic equation it's asking for. So I just do the box. Okay? Do the box like we just did previously. I'm going to put x plus 4 here. I'm going to put x minus 1 there, and I'll multiply. So right here, this is x times x, which is x squared. Right here, this is 4 times x, which is 4x. Here, that's x times negative 1, which is negative 1x. And then 4 times negative 1 is negative 4 there, which means I have x squared. These like terms, 4x plus negative 1x would be a positive 3x. And then I got negative 4. There you go. There's my quadratic equation, which means my a is 1. Okay. My b would be 3. And my c would be negative 4. And there you go. That's right. Okay. Okay. We have more here. I don't know if I need to do any more of these or not. We'll do this one right here, and then we'll call it quits. We're going to do the square root property. So we've got z plus 3 squared equals negative 15. Okay. So see how this is squared? So I can do the square root property. Square root both sides. All right, the square root cancels the square, so I have z plus 3. Over here, when I do the square root of that, it's plus or minus. But now see how this is negative? This is imaginary, which means that's going to send out an I. Okay. Now I want to see if the 15 breaks down. Well, 15 is 3 times 5, and that's nothing will come out of the radical. So we can't break down the radical. All right, so solving here, I need to minus 3 on both sides. This goes away. And I can't put nothing together here because that's an I, imaginary number, and this is a real number, and this has a radical, and that doesn't. So I can't do anything with it. So I've got the negative 3 first, plus or minus the I radical 15. And that's all I can do. So if you look over here, the solution is C, negative 3 plus or minus I radical 15. Okay. Now, here's one thing about these radicals. how the I is. The I is always in front of the radical. Now, if you have a number like 2 radical 3, something like this, the I would be in between them. So if you have an I, it's in front of the radical, and then if you have a number, it's in front of the I always. So it's always in those orders. Okay. And then here's another one here. I'll let you look at it here. You can pause it, and there's the problem, and here's what the answers are. You could try this on your own. Okay. So anyway, that's our lesson for today, lesson 1.4, quadratic equations, and I hope you have a great day.